So this is the unretired engineer coming at you again. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my career and my experiences with remote work. Starting in the 1980s, I moved into a engineering environment which was very traditional. Essentially a large manufacturing and engineering facility full of cubicles and manufacturing equipment that allowed you to really kind of go out and touch and work on the equipment. And then after that, I basically worked for a tech startup for a few years. I then worked for one of the big defense contractors for a number of years, and then worked at Wolfspeed building commercial power electronic modules for a number of years. So a number of different locations, and across that time, more than 40 years, I spent about 15 of those remote over 3 distinct eras. And so I have kind of a bit of a I have some background in remote work, remote engineering in particular. So obviously I left school in 1982. I actually went into a very poor engineering employment picture. Decided to work for the Navy. Actually had some contacts that allowed me to find a job, and started working on electronics. So I'm a mechanical engineer working in electronics in packaging. That's what I've done for my whole career. At that time, remote work was very rare. It was something that the occasional person did, like an architect or something like that, but really the tools didn't allow it. But I shouldn't have done it anyway. That first 5 to 10 years was high density learning, working with some people who had 20 years of experience doing what they did, working on equipment in that facility, which did stuff, obsolescence management, and maintaining aircraft, that some of which had flown first in World War II, and they had vacuum tubes in them. So part of what I did in microelectronics was replacing components that no longer existed, like vacuum tubes, and with microelectronics components that we could build into a form factor that could still fit into the old electronic harnesses. So I did a lot of that work, essentially worked all the way from, digital and analog electronics, microwave and RF electronics, a little bit of power electronics, though in those days, 40 volts and an amp was a lot of power as far as I was concerned. So after 15 years and working my way up to a GM 13 position, which is basically a manager position, engineering manager position, I was a guru in how you made electronic packaging. I basically had some knowledge, experience, or even product in pretty much any kind of electronic packaging that the Navy used. And so I was working for the Navy as a consultant on some technical program working for the Office of Naval Research. The facility I worked for had done all that learning, was closed by Congress to save money after the Cold War ended. And in 1996, I basically started my own company, and for about 3 years, I was operating doing business as Mandine, manufacturing by design, doing consulting work for the Navy on power electronic building blocks, which will come up later. So in that day, SolidWorks had just come out. I bought a copy of SolidWorks 97, which is a rather different package than it is today. And I used that and was able to get a lot of work done. That plus the Microsoft package, which was pretty much the same then as it is today, though much more crude in some ways. So I did a lot of work, did papers. I went to universities, I went to companies, I went to government research facilities looking at all the materials and the processes, etc., that went into building power electronics, right? And the power electronics, was now for me hundreds of amps to thousands of amps, hundreds of volts to thousands of volts for Navy, Air Force, Army vehicles. I consulted in that. I was using a cell phone and a pager and my desktop computer, and I was traveling a lot, working remote in Indianapolis for an office in Washington, D.C. wasn't that bad. I was there often enough to kind of keep contact and show that, yes, I was a human being, and we went to conferences, etc. together. So kind of kept in contact, and it worked. So I moved on to a company that did R&D research and a lot of development work. They had basically taken some of the ideas I had worked on with them as a consultant, and they had turned that into a program. I went there, worked on that program, was the project manager, project engineer for it for about 7 years after that. And I was in the office for that time, did a fair amount of traveling, but I was in the office. After that, moved to a large defense contractor, DRS, which is DRS Leonardo now, and was working on a very large Navy contract again, actually a derivative in some ways of the work that I had done earlier on what we call power electronic building blocks, and using that approach for a very large permanent magnet motor drive system. I was the manager of power electronic packaging for them. Unfortunately, the Navy is reasonably risk averse. They put that program into kind of a program that was going to develop the technology. They decided not to use it in the Zumwalt class destroyer. And so the company had kind of went into a struggle mode to recoup new work, and I was doing that. I basically was looking for new work for them. In the early days, I was in the office, I was working 90-hour weeks, and I was just going nuts. I couldn't do it. They let me move back to Indiana, and I was remote for 10 years after that. I was a engineer working on projects. So really project manager, project engineer, and proposal engineer for 10 years, developing new concepts, building new teams to build products, all the way from generators integrated into transmissions to APUs for hovercraft, auxiliary propulsion systems for Coast Guard cutters, and other things. And I did that for over 10 years. And during that phase, really came to understand the advantages and then the disadvantages of working remote. Yeah, the technology by that time had reached the point that you had video conferencing, you had smartphones, you had remote computers, etc., that you could do a lot of work on. And so I was very successful working with teams all across the United States, business units within DRS, and then companies outside of DRS to build projects, build programs, build products to get to the customers. And that worked pretty well. At the end of that, DRS kind of had to pivot back. Actually, the very large permanent magnet machine that they had developed when I was first there had gone to the Navy. The Navy and DRS had worked through all of the problems. It was basically seen as the solution for the next generation of ballistic missile submarine, and that's what the company DRS unit was pivoted to working on, essentially totally. And my programs all became secondary, and I moved on. I was not really there to be working on stuff that was no longer central to the company. Some of those programs went on. Some of them are reaching success even today, 15 years on, but I was no longer there. So I made a very distinct decision to go work for a company where I was working in the office. What I had seen was the gradual degradation of my skills as a designer and my skills knowledge base as a person, knowledgeable in power electronics. So I went to work for Wolfspeed, And at Wolfspeed, they were focused on delivering to the commercial market, as well as the military, but mostly the commercial. And there I designed another number of modules and developed others where others had designed them, but I helped improve them and then move them into production. And I think we were pretty successful at that. We moved from a small, less than a handful of commercial products to a suite of over 20, of which a large percentage were mine, or at least programs that I was leading. So we did pretty well. In that period, COVID hit. So was not in the office all the time, was working remote and hybrid. And, it reinforced some of the things that I had learned in the 10 years when I was working for DRS. So, and what I'll do is I'll come down on this. So there's one kind of minor point, is that video meetings, to me, for engineering programmatics are very useful tool. Very few people want to be on a video call any longer than they need to be. A video call is also a great mechanism for forcing you to have an agenda, to have action items and things you want to knock down and get things done. So if you want to have meetings on a very regular basis and you want to have meetings across a very dispersed team, which even at Wolfspeed, they were very dispersed, China, Germany, US, the whole 9 yards. Video meetings are the way to go, because you knock things down, get done, and get out of there as quickly as possible. They're not great for ideation. They're not great for other things where you need to resolve knotty problems. But for running a program, they're a key tool, and I think not always used as aggressively as they should. Because I think in-person meetings can often drag on longer than they need to, because people seem to they want to sit and chat, and that's human nature, but it can be kind of counterproductive if you're trying to push forward. So, but on the other side, I guess the two big takeaways that I have is, one, if you're young and you are new in your career, or you're trying to develop skills and whatnot, you need to be in the office. Being remote is no way to be. I'm not sure about software, never did software, but I still think that you really probably need to be in the office so you're near your peers and near the senior staff who will show you, if not directly, then by kind of osmosis, why they make decisions they do, why they go in the directions they do, how to make decisions, how to move forward. It's very helpful for the first number of years, 5 years, 10 years, it really is. If you're doing hardware, it's impossible to do the job when you're not able to go and touch the equipment, and it's even better if you can go touch the manufacturing equipment that makes the piece that you're doing. It really is very critical. But once you are past that, and when you are running a program, particularly a program where not everything is within the organization, very few organizations have everything soup to nuts. And the reality is, if you're working on a project where you are bringing pieces in from one place, from inside and outside the organization, and particularly from other companies, you need to basically be able to take a broader view and say, okay, I need to sub-optimize a little bit my own organization's wants, because we need to meet the need of whatever that is. And mine was, one of the key ones was transmissions. When we were integrated a machine into a transmission, there are a lot of things about a transmission, industrial transmission, that are critical to its being a transmission, it's being safe to use in a vehicle. And we had to do some things which were a little bit suboptimal as far as the machine were concerned. But in the end, we had to do that. And it was hard to push those when you were in the office, right? Because management wants you to do the thing that the other subject matter experts want you to do. The subject matter experts and your social peers are kind of pushing you in a certain direction. It is much better if you're a bit remote from that and can kind of take a higher level view. That's, I think, a key takeaway, that remote work can really give you a tool to manage your optimization, particularly in what you might call heterogeneous systems, where you're pulling things together from multiple places. Over 40 years and then 15 years of remote work, that's kind of my takeaways. Hopefully this gave you a bit of value. If so, please hit the like, hit the subscribe. I'll have other nuggets of info coming at you as time goes along, and then also updates on novel writing and transition to unretired. If you have any comments, or if you have any experiences of your own of remote work and optimization, sub-optimization, put them in the comments and we can bring them up. So thank you very much. It's been the Unretired Engineer signing off. Thank you.